They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Do you know that importing consumables and domestic products kill local manufacturing and negatively affect the growth of the economy? That some imported products are dangerous to your health? That building factories can generate massive employment and grow the economy? Buying locally made products and services means investing back in the economy. Thousands of Nigerians are innovative and can take Nigeria to the next level. Growing the economy starts with you and I. Raise the standard. Grow the economy. Buy made in Nigeria.
So what's up, sweetheart? You really look like you're up to something.
I have a secret.
Okay.
I'll be going to Europe next week.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Like you have your visa, your passport, your plane ticket?
No, not that way. Some men are helping us. We pay them, they take us through the desert, and then we cross the sea into Europe.
The desert, the sea. Isn't that the route where many have died?
Yes, it is indeed a very dangerous journey. In 2016 alone, 4,900 people died while crossing the Mediterranean Sea to enter Europe. Many were Nigerians. For the very few who survived the journey, they are forced into prostitution or other crimes just to survive. Eventually, they will be arrested and deported to Nigeria. Don't be a victim. Don't go this way.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
And Bayo Atoyebe is in the studio to do his usual bits. Bayo, good morning once again.
Good morning, Ben. Good morning, Blessing. The Hamatan haze is back. So if you are going out, make sure you wear a headdress or a headscarf so that you don't grow gray hair from Hamatan haze. Good morning, Nigeria.
That's a kind one. I would like to see the men in serious scarves, not the headdress. Okay, let's take a look at what stories are trending. I'll start off with blueprints. Leading for the blueprint, of course, is the insecurity and bad road complaint on the Abuja-Kaduna route as Abuja-Kaduna commuters outstretch train capacity. With 2 riders, VIPs hustle for first class as passengers want more coaches. That story starts right there, and there is the photograph of people trying to book their tickets, passengers boarding the train from Rigasa Station, Kaduna to Abuja during the Yuletide. But just above that, we have police, DSS, others avert religious crisis in Ilorin. That's what we find on page 16. Southern Kaduna killings, stop incitements. Federal government warns Christian Association of Nigeria and the Catholic Church. Page 6 will let you into that story. Army sends 800 troops to Darfur. You find that story on page 7. And to page 17, there is another story on Ilorin Airport. Drug traffickers haven to Saudi Arabia. It's coming from NARCON, the body looking into aviation matters. Biafra, IPOB releases video on Nigeria-British alliance. That's what we find on page 9. That's the story trending on front pages of just the blueprint now. Okay, Claire. All right, leadership. I'll start on a very positive note, and Bayo, take note of this. It's just in front of leadership, below the nameplate, and it reads, oil hits 18-month high at $58 per barrel as output cut begins. Now, that's good news. That's an 18-month high increase there. All right, we'll move down now to other parts of the story. The lead story on the front page is right there. Land import ban, 10,000 vehicles trapped at Seme and Idiroko borders. Now it comes with a rider. Customs redeploys 8 ACGs, 238 DCs in major shakeup. Now the full complement of this story you can find on page 5. And the beautiful embrace there, that's the picture story. The new Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, in his office with his new Deputy Secretary General and former Minister of Environment, Amina Mohammed. That's on their first day at work in their new capacities. That's very interesting there. And Senate to investigate Kaduna killings, and this is coming from the Senate President Saraki, also trending on the front page there. Now, at the bottom of the paper, the Gambia Electoral Commission chairman flees his country. Details of that is on page 5. And federal government unveils 3-year plan to rehabilitate 50 bridges nationwide. And another story on the front page is just a little below the nameplates there, and it reads why Jigawa Assembly impeached Speaker. But details of that is on page 18. Bayo, I think you can just take up the bits that we have.
Yes, let's talk about the warring situation in southern Kaduna. Nigerians have been called upon not to allow themselves to be dragged into religious conflict. This is the caution made by the Minister of Interior, Lieutenant General Abdurrahman Dambazaw, and he says that it is worrying that criminal violence in southern Kaduna is being given a religious interpretation. And he laments that there are those looking for ways to operate further division along religious and ethnic lines, and this will not augur well for our stability as a nation. He said true religious leaders should not fan embers of hate, but ensure that communities live in peace and harmony. He points out that there are over 500 ethnic groups in the nation, and we are also a multi-religious nation, and therefore we need to live amicably, and fanning such embers certainly would not go well for coexistence. But the Secretary for the Kaduna State Christian Association of Nigeria, Reverend Sunday Ibrahim, also said that it is rather better to issue comforting words to the victims rather than cast Christian leaders in bad light. And he says, what can one attribute continuous killing and destruction in communities that are Christian by gunmen who come chanting Allahu Akbar? He says from Godogodo to Gadabu in Jama and Chawai in Kwaru local government area, the victims and survivors indicate that the gunmen came in, killed pigs, stole cows, and burned churches and homes. He says that it would be, Sunday Ibrahim says that the minister should please come over and see things with his own eyes. But meanwhile, like you read, the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, says that the Senate will investigate the situations in Kaduna killing. He emphasized that the Senate will inquire into the real situation and also provide a lasting solution. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Army has deployed troops to southern Kaduna and taken full control of the crisis zone. The spokesman for the Army, Brigadier General Usman, says that the Army has directives to restore law and order, and the brigade command has also been approved and will soon be established in that area. And I think that the danger here is when there are crises, people tend to give it connotations of either ethnic or religious. If you recall, when the crisis in Jos was brewing, it was given a similar tone. Today, we are lucky the people in Plateau have reconciled and the problem has been put behind us. When even Boko Haram started, the initial attacks were at churches, and it was given these secular connotations until everybody realized that we had a big problem in our hands. So it's better for our leaders, both the secular and the religious and political leaders, to put their heads together to find a solution to this crisis.
All right, let's take a look at the next paper I have with me, Daily Trust. Just below the nameplate, we have what we've just talked about. Army deploys troops to southern Kaduna. But then moving on, federal government to spend 270 billion naira on 50 bridges. What bridges? You find out on page 7. And still with that line of stories written out there, PDP, that's the People's Democratic Party, should be prescribed. This is coming from Shetima. And why saying so? Find out on page 36. But from the Cherry News, Claire read earlier, we still have issues about the first day of trading in 2017. The oil stocks, Naira tumble on first 2017 trading day. That story starts right there and continues on page 5. But there is a graphic representation of how they all perform from the oil, Naira, and the stocks. Other stories, customs redeploys senior officers. You find that story on page 7. And ex-CJN wants national emergency on judiciary. You still find that story too on page 3. And back to page 7. Accidents claimed 413 lives in Kaduna in 2016. This is attributed to Federal Road Safety Corps reports. Claire.
All right, a new Telegraph lead has quite a splash of stories on its front page. I'll quickly take the lead story now. Thousands of vehicles trapped at borders as customs enforce land importation ban, and dealers fret, demand 6-month grace period, and massive shake-up hits customs as 246 excuse me, officers redeployed. You can find that story on page 2. And there below you see the picture story of soldiers. Army deploys troops in southern Kaduna. Senate vows to probe killings as can to federal government bring perpetrators to book. That story is on page 3. Now, alcohol abuse increases heart risks. That's a story on the health sector. You can read it up on page 7. Okay, let me just quickly go a little just below the nameplate. Buhari or Shomole meet in Asu Rock. It's on page 6. 2019, PDP will suffer total defeat. And this is coming from Ono. It's on page 5. Workers picket National Library over unpaid salaries. It's on page 7. And stepsister tortures teenage girl with hot iron blade. That story, it's on page 8. Now, atop the nameplate, fuel landing cost soars to 213 per litre. And has 2 riders there. Import gulps extra, excuse me, 2.4 billion naira daily. And oil price hits $58.37, 18-month high. Those are some of the stories. Bayo, I don't know if I should quickly take on the Daily Sun so that you can wrap it up all together. Daily Sun has a lead story, and it's on, of course, the Boko Haram. Buhari to Shekau, surrender now. That's bold caption. And that's Oshodi there in front of you. That's the picture story. The commercial center of Lagos bubbling back to life after Christmas and New Year's celebrations. Now, shake up in customs, just following immediately, and you have all the details. We've told you all about this. Now, to my right column there, that's to your left-hand side, Source loyalists there, Kano CP. We can't be intimidated, they declared. The story is on page 9. And now hear this. MMM releases new rules ahead of January 14 resumption. Now that's on page 44. New tariffs for vehicles, others take effect. SUVs attract 70% duty, Tokumbo 35%, and rice 60%.
Well, let's talk about the economy. The papers are reporting the crude oil that has started on the positive note at the opening of the year. It rose to about $58.15, which has been described as 18 months low. But it has already started...
18 months high.
Yeah, 18 months high since we had these fluctuations in oil prices. But it's already come down to 55.42 as at the latest reckoning time. Also, the Daily Trust specifically also pointed out that investment in stock has also suffered about minus 0.96 decline. However, the Naira at the parallel market is now going about 488 Naira to $1. The central bank rate still remains at 305, while the interbank rate is 314. The worrying part here is that the parallel market tends to undermine what is going on at the central bank and the interbank rate, and also at the bureau de change. Elsewhere, what we describe as parallel market is described as an illegal market. They used to obtain everywhere on the street, and they have been scrapped. And until something is done about it, this will continue to undermine the monetary policy. Also on the import deadline, already Association of Nigerian Licensed Custom Agents are calling for an extension of 6 months because they say they have thousands of vehicles that are trapped. And Nigeria Board of Customs is set to enforce the ban on importation of vehicles, either used or new, across the borders.
So all must receive their own share of tariff. Thank you very much, Bayo. We'll do this again tomorrow. Certainly.
Thank you for having me, as always.
Okay. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and showing live on the network service of the NTA. Now to the background of the story for the day. Of course, we're taking a look at sustaining the gains of the fight against insurgency. Now, the cherry news of the military's capture of Camp Zero, which was the stronghold of the Boko Haram insurgents, continues to receive accolades by various people and organizations within and outside Nigeria. To this end, key players are calling on the military to sustain the gains of the fight against insurgents to actually win the peace. Here's Omotola Omojola.
President Buhari receiving the flag of Boko Haram from Camp Zero, a sign of triumph over the insurgents by the Nigerian military. The victory of today has come from the sacrifice of valiant men who laid down their lives for the peace and sovereignty of a nation. It brings a sigh of relief for citizens who fled their homelands for fear of the terrorists, and perhaps the hope of an economic revival in the northeast, which is the worst hit in the terror that has spanned for over 5 years. The troops not only rescued the hostages of war, which numbered in their thousands, but also recaptured all the towns where the flag of the insurgents were hoisted. Efforts by the military also led to the return of some of the kidnapped Chibok girls, giving hope for the release of the others. Over 2 million Nigerians are displaced as a result of the insurgency, but thanks to the victory of the military and efforts by the federal and some of the affected governments on reconstruction of Northeast, some are finding their ways back home. Roads that have been abandoned because of activities of insurgents have also been reopened, while the citizens in the Northeast have felt confident enough to organize rallies to appreciate the military for it.
Let's start off with your declaration recently that, and I'm quoting you now, you have won the war. Now you need to win the peace. But not long after that, Boko Haram leader Shekau released the video, which of course the military says it is investigating. What exactly is happening? What is this recurring, Shekau phenomenon? Is he or is he not dead?
Well, thank you very much for that question. And you're right, I made a declaration that we've won the war, but we need to win the peace. You're also right that there is a purported video released by Shekau. Again, what will you expect of a dying man? In my earlier brief, I also said that the Boko Haram leadership, as well as others who were in Camp Zero, which was their headquarters right in the heart of Sambisa, were on the run. And currently, we're after on their chase. So I want to believe that that video was released, even though, of course, some forensic analysis is still being done. I believe that it was released just to give some semblance of their relevance and presence. Will we continue to hunt them wherever they are, even though, of course, I've called on them to give up the fight and to surrender and take advantage of Operation Safe Corridor that is open for them. So I stand by the declaration which I made last Wednesday, and I want to call on all Nigerians to give, to increase the level of support to not just the military, but of course to other security agencies. And I also do want to use golden opportunity to call on the rest of Nigerians to give the kind of support beyond what they've been doing, and then to also encourage other security agencies to now be in the lead in terms of moving into the areas where we have liberated, the roads that are open, the communities that are returning, for them to begin to ensure that normal socio-economic activities begin to thrive in those areas. So that's the position.
Sorry, Blessing, just before you come with your question, did I, if I understand what you were saying, are you implying that Shekau may have been incapacitated but not dead?
Well, that's not the position. I'm saying, of course, you may have also heard me in the past, as well as some of my colleagues who preceded me, that Shekau was killed severally. Of course, I mean, I believe that the model of Shekau that we now have is the one I'm speaking to. That, of course, he could have come up with that video to give some sense of relevance and being alive. No problem. And that's of course is expected. We were not when we went into Camp Zero. We were not expecting that we will not see anybody representing the leadership of Boko Haram. I'm speaking to the leadership of Boko Haram, whoever he is.
Okay. All right, Major General Irabor, let's touch on that, the last moments of trying to rout out what was the last evidence of people still in Sambisa forest. Many Nigerians were hopeful that we will be able to have gotten the remaining girls and as many that were abducted. But what could have happened in the heat of it that we couldn't get to see the girls, and what exactly happened? The Chibok girls, the remaining Chibok girls and many other abducted, where could they be now and what exactly is happening?
You know, the last brief that I gave, I hinted on the number that we rescued within that week. And that was 1,240. Now, after that, of course, a lot of, rescues have been conducted. For the Chibok girls, of course, which, incidentally happened to be what we desire to, rescue. Each time we went for any operation or in any of the various camps, that, of course, remains at the back of our mind that this is our main effort, as it were, in military parlance. But, of course, also looking at the terrorists themselves, if one may think from their own point of view, they want to preserve them and to do everything possible to ensure that we do not have access to them. So that is understandable. You also saw a video which we showed, which was an area in surveillance of what transpired. We believe that the chase that we are currently conducting will yield very positive results. But let me say that for every time we rescue any of the hostages, or even those who could have been sympathizers or family members of the Boko Haram terrorists, our desire is to see that some of them will be Chibok girls, but that has not happened, and we believe that before the operation winds down, we will get to that stage.
Do we have any idea where those girls might be at the moment?
And operation.
Well, you see, when you have an area surveillance, even the picture that we showed, the video that we showed, how could anybody know that this is Chibok girl and this is not Chibok girl? So it goes, beyond just having to see people running. I cannot say where precisely they are. If I knew where they were or where they are, of course we will go after them and ensure that they are properly encircled, and then of course we'll do the needful to have them rescued. But of course, it's all part and parcel of the process, part of the operational plan on intelligence gathering that one needs to synthesize to be able to get to the root of it. It's a continuous process, and I think that we will get there.
Okay, now that the military, has, of course, you've overrun Sambisa forest, how safe are the areas of the northeast today, especially those that are worst affected by the insurgency? Of course, roads are being opened to the public. We heard report of that, some very strategic roads in Maiduguri. And the military also talked about mopping up operations. So how extensive might this mopping up be?
The entire Northeast is safe. That I can tell you categorically. If you know the geography of the Northeast, and let me zero in on Borno State precisely, which of course has been the epicenter of this madness. You know, over 75% of the destruction actually happened, in my assessment, happened in Borno State. Now, there is no part of Borno State, as I speak to you, that you do not have access to. All our troops, they dominate. Now, the roads, the two very critical roads in the northern part of Borno State were the ones that the Chief of Army Staff and the Governor of Borno State on Christmas Day, of course, that we opened, and of course we took a drive to Damasak to spend the night with the troops. The same also for the road leading to Mongono and Baga, and over 600 vehicles, as soon as that road was open, went to Baga. Of course, beyond Baga and Damasak, there is no road. We moved cross-country to Malamfaturi, where our troops we still have, and then we're dominating the entire area. Then, talking about the southern part, or let's even talk about the central part, Bama, Damboa, and then, of course, Maiduguri. Everywhere, you say people are living there. Then when you go to Polka, throughout the southern part, Polka goes to Chibok and other areas. Of course, there are some other certain parts of Borno State that there was nothing too significant in terms of Boko Haram insurgency. Talking about Hawul, some parts of Biu, and Kwakusa, you don't find such. That, of course, normal life, has been existing in those areas. So when people say, is the Northeast safe, I ask them, where else do you want? Gamborongala, which is to the east towards Cameroon, you have people that are already living in those communities.
What about the fears of mines, which, of course, as we know, have also claimed some of your men?
No, there's no doubt about it. For the major roads, that we have done, creditably to ensure that those IEDs are cleared. Of course, you may all talk about the bushes and all that. That is not. It's like saying that because we should have armed robbers, that once in a while attack the road, then we should not move anymore. No, the life is not like that. There is no absolute security. Security is relative, and from country to country. Even the developed world, the US, the UK, there are other forms of criminality that exist. That we have been fighting war in the Northeast does not mean that life is not safe. No. It's safe. And even when Boko Haram is over, you also have criminal gangs who want to take advantage of, whatever social, whatever economic situation, or as it were, want to take advantage of it, to want to, perpetrate evil. That is normal with human existence. In social, in human social interactions, you find that people have so many different reasons for embarking on certain ventures, which has nothing to do with, wanting to, sustain, in this case, Boko Haram terrorist activities.
All right, Major Rabon, let's take a look. We need to talk about your men and officers still. Are they holding out to some of them spending protracted periods? This is one theater of war that have gone on for years, and a whole lot have happened in their own lives as well as families. Now, let's take a look at what you're doing to actually take on post-war psychological evaluation and also treatments. We must get them in the right frame of mind for their own work.
Very important question, if you ask me.
Yes, Blessing, you're very right, and I think it's critical. Each time we rotated troops, we conduct post-traumatic stress disorder test on them, and also give them some time to go to spend with their families before returning to the barracks. But within the theater, before the troops are rotated, there are regular passes that are issued to troops. And there are some, of course, depending on the level of welfare issues there are. the various commanders, of course, allowed them to go to see their families and solve such problems. But you see, this is the reason why we need to let Nigerians know that security is everybody's business. It is a multi-sectoral engagement. And of course, it's every citizen's responsibility to ensure so that you did not, create conditions that we foster the deployment of troops over a protracted period. But I'm glad to report that where we are now, with respect to the operations in the Northeast, we've gotten to a stage where we believe that we'll begin to draw down. I thank God that the Chief of Army Staff, of course, in his message to the troops, that has made a promise that this year, 2017, the troops will begin to return to the barracks, where we are going to now have, of course, he has also directed me to come up with a means of ensuring that the gains are sustained, for us to have a more mobile posture, and then reorganizing the theater to fit into that mode of operation, to give room for those who need to be rotated to be rotated, and then anyone who is coming to the theater from now going forward will be for a limited period, and of course taking into consideration the lessons that we've learned in this operation. So quite a lot has been done. The commander of the Medical Corps has also been sensitized as to what she needs to do, along with the entire Corps, to begin to address issues of stress, disorder that might arise with the troops. So a lot of plans are on to ensure that the health status of our troops is well taken care of.
Okay, Major General Irabo, fighting, the war against insurgency has been a well-coordinated effort. But that aside, to what would you say is responsible for the success? That's one. And secondly, how have you coordinated this multi-force strategy to achieve the result, the final onslaught against Boko Haram?
I want to believe that you are relating it to the past. Operations are dynamic. Threats are dynamic. You see, leadership is key in almost every area of our engagement. What, in my view, has led to where we are now is a clearer leadership direction, a focused leadership direction, and of course, leadership understanding of what the issues are. You see, when you visit the theater, you have a clearer understanding, a better understanding as to the reports that you receive back in the office. And I think that has largely accounted for it. There you are able to solve problems on ground, attend to operational challenges, and of course take certain decisions that if you were not in the front lines, you will not take, or you will not even be, it will be difficult for anyone to explain that to you. So the aggregate of all this is what, in my view, has led to this. And I think that I'm grateful to the person of the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General T.Y. Borotai, the Chief of Defense Staff, and of course the Chief of Air Staff, who also has been very supportive using the air component, and as well as the Chief of Naval Staff, who many would think that has not been visible, but that's not true. He has the naval forces that are there. Right now, they are operating in the Lake Chad waters. So the aggregate of the input of these, wonderful military leaders, especially the Chief of Army Staff himself, has accounted for the gains that we in Operation Life Elderly have enjoyed and have been able to do. It's the encouragement they've given to us that has led to this.
Okay, Operation Dolly, of course, enjoyed the different dynamics. Like you pointed out, operations are dynamics, such are threats as well, or so are threats rather. Now, let's see, to what extent do you foresee other threats kind of coming on? Especially now, we still have fleeing members of the Boko Haram in whatever areas they've gone to now. Now we can place the direction of our girls and some other, Chibok girls and some other abducted members of the community. There are infiltration into other parts of the country. What new threats do you foresee, and how do we begin to surmount that, even as you have done very well with this last operation?
Very good question. Let me also recall. I don't know whether you know how much of knowledge you may have regarding our civil war. But of course, I'm sure that history too, what's been recorded in history, you would have availed yourself of the contents. Now, the issue is this. For the civil war that we had, after the civil war ended, of course, there was a new dimension, which was the issue of armed robbery, which of course got to a stage where it became more of a problem. Now, coming specifically to Boko Haram issue, you know, at the early stages of Boko Haram, we never had anything like suicide bomb explosions, IEDs, and stuff like that. It's not impossible that some criminal gangs will want to take such measures, not necessarily to foster insurgency or terrorism, but for whatever they may see as a way of life or a survival strategy. It's not impossible. We have also seen the cross-border incursions. It remains a challenge, and I think going forward, learning from the experience of this war, greater measures will be taken to ensure that our borders are properly secured. That, from our part, from the military perspective, we're doing something, but again, that's not our responsibility, and I think it needs to be stressed. But again, the contributions we need to make to ensure that these borders are secured, we will take right steps to ensure that they do. And we also encourage other agencies that are responsible to do so. Will there be newer creations? You know, there's already a line of thought that we need border guards. That, of course, discussions are on, and I think that as the engagement continues, we will come up with what we think is most appropriate. So, other threats, of course, will be, you know, especially for those who may not be gainfully employed. Truly, when you come to the Northeast, you will see a whole lot of them lying around the streets. I believe that government is doing something to ensure that those street urchins are taken away so that they do not fall prey to, you know, criminal gangs, recruiting them for whatever purpose that they intend to achieve. So this is the position. I believe that going forward, a lot of thinking will go into addressing some of these envisaged threats post Lafia Adoli.
Okay, Major General, I want to, you know, assume that when you talked about winning the peace, you know, the need to win the peace, you imply also, you know, sustaining, of course, the gains that has, you know, been recorded. But on the part of the military, do you have any battle plans?
Well, winning the peace is all sector engagement. In fact, it's more of a civil-led operation. Civil-led because let me even tell you, the campaign schematics which we employed for this war had has different lines of operation. The military is one, and then the military actually accounts for between 25 to 30% of what is required. So if we say that we have made gains within the confines of the 30%, and we're saying the war is over, that we've won the war, that we need to win the peace, that tells you that 70%, of course, which is essentially civil-led, needs to be undertaken. And what are those activities that must take place? The roads need to be repaired. Communities need to be rebuilt. Schools need to be built. Hospitals need to be built. Communities need to be encouraged to take greater responsibility in terms of getting themselves engaged either in farming or in other economic activities. And to do this, the people must be sensitized. Other stakeholders must be involved. And then, of course, intelligence, earlier on I alluded to the fact that the stage of operation now will require that those who have infiltrated, intelligence about them must be given to the security agencies for them to be able to play their part. So when all these activities are aggregated and properly pursued, of course, life begins to return to normal. In Abuja today, as I speak to you, there are a lot of criminal elements in different parts of the city. But then, the reason why they are not manifesting is because some security agencies are doing what they need to do to keep their heads down. So it is the same way that I'm calling on the rest of us to begin to do what is required to ensure that it's not Boko Haram we'll be talking about. How do we live our life as a people? How do we get back to what it used to be before Boko Haram, came to destabilize our life structure? So this is precisely what I mean by winning the peace. Is a multi-sectoral engagement, which I believe that in due course we should and we must get there.
So let's take a look at those in human and material terms. Can you actually declare that emphatically this war is over and rebuilding the confidence of the men and Nigerian army to stand as it used to?
Yeah, well, my coming here, and I want to thank you for inviting me. Whatever I have said and what I also will say is all part of that reassurance that, and I thank the Chief Army Staff too, and other service chiefs and the CDS. They've been making statements along these lines, and that is to say that everywhere around the world, war is expensive, and there's no reason for war even. But again, we exist to fight wars. When I say we exist, existing as a military, because you must plan for the unforeseen. And so the price that we have paid, unfortunately, some of my colleagues have paid the supreme price, and of course it's regrettable. But again, this is part and parcel of the oath of allegiance that we have taken. We can only call for the understanding of the generality of the people, for them to know, and then for them to also play their part to ensure that we do not have this kind of madness repeat itself in our land. Peace is sweet. Go to Maiduguri today. Go to the different parts of the Northeast today. When you interact with the people, they will tell you, in fact, what they now enjoy. And I think that is the reason why Boko Haram can never rise up again. Why? Because they know what life was and what life it is today.
All right, Major General, I think in the few minutes that we have, just less than 3 minutes actually to round off our conversation, I'd just like you to speak to this issue. Now that the military has officially declared this war to be over, how central might the multi-national joint force be to your sustaining the gains?
Well, it's not that the war is over, because winning the peace is part of the war. For the multinational joint task force, which is an arrangement among the Lake Chad Basin Commission countries, with its headquarters in N'Djamena, that, of course, is an arrangement that we in Operation Lafia Dole have a partnership with, to ensure that the criminal activities around the shores of Lake Chad are checked. That arrangement will continue. It's been in place even before Operation Lafia Dole, just that it was recently re-engineered to give the kind of bite that we now see. That, of course, which has also been of advantage to us, because the other countries have come to understand that this war does not have borders. And so the cross-border, pattern of the war has now been checked, and that's what has assisted in ensuring that we get to this stage. I think that we will. That arrangement will continue, and we'll keep, also interfacing with them going forward.
Can you quickly speak to the issue of human rights abuses, from International Watch Group against the military in the course of fighting this insurgency?
Human rights is a matter of perception. For us in Operation Lafayette Adole, we're a professional military, we're a professional force. We operate within the confines of the rules of engagement and noting the international humanitarian law and international human rights law. But what I can tell you is that someone's perception of our activities is wrong, and may be wrong. Why? Because he's not on ground. He does not know issues that are involved. Take, for example, someone comes to a detention facility and says that the meals that we serve the detainees, they are not rich enough. And I ask him, the troops that are fighting now, that are even guarding them, is it not the same meal? The man on the streets, how rich and balanced is his meal? That you find someone in Switzerland or in US eating, what he termed to be balanced diet. Is that what obtains in our society? So you cannot use other people's standards to come to judge us. What is the living standard of the average man on the street who has not committed any offense? How is he feeding? And then the man in our detention facilities, are you expecting him to feed better than the man that is outside? In any case, even you said he should be giving fruits. Before he came into the detention center, was he eating fruits? And even though we give them anyway, but I'm trying to say that we do not have any human rights issue, and I think that we have operated within the confines of the rules of engagement, and it's for them to prove that we have done things outside what the provisions are.
Major General Lucky Rabo, Theatre Commander, Operation Lafayette Adole, in sustaining the gains in the war against insurgency. Thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
As the members of the men and officers.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. I'm sure we'll get to find out what more you're doing in due course. We'll be right back after this break.
Certainly, Ajunwa is the Olympic champion.
We did it before and we can do it again with the new strategy through the first National Grassroots Sports Festival scheduled for Abuja, Nigeria from 22nd to 29th April 2017 to prepare Nigeria to win medals in international sporting events. NTA, the largest television network in Africa, is the broadcast partner. For sponsorship, contact the Chairman Chief Coordinator on 0809 647 0111 or Mukta on 080-330-20855. Email info@grassrootssportsfestival.com. The Grassroots Sports Festival is endorsed and in partnership with the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports Development. Join us.
I was dreaming, and my grandfather can't tell me, say, he want to make me very, very rich with a number.
You leave business where you go see for ordinary eye. You go to collect number from land of the coast.
Akwai bomboy makatale turu. Na in grandfather at the given rangalamba.
So when he die, go to do 419 for that time.
This week on your award-winning comedy series, Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Funky Malam, Ime Bishop.
Gunners for life, youth, courage, greatness.
All these shouts on even go the shouts. You have regard for this our local team. Teams like Enugu Rangers, Canopy Pillars, Enyimba, like Ashanti Kotoko.
Professor John Bull, this Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network, International, and Star Times.
Over and out. Welcome to the new speed of life.
NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, a subsidiary of the Nigerian Television Authority, specializes in creating comfort in all areas of life, such as real estate investments, that is, land, houses, and office spaces, mass leasing, savings and loan scheme, household items and car loans, and so much more. Other information and entertainment services include Property in Style, a TV program that airs on the network service of the NTA, and also Property Connect, a nationwide magazine. Our priority is to bridge poverty gaps and sustain quality welfare of our clients. Partner with us and watch us help you grow. Pay us a visit today at the NTA headquarters permanent site, Area 11 Garki, Abuja, or our Lagos office at number 15 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. For more information, visit our website on www.ntaproperties.com.ng, or you can email us on ntapig2000@yahoo.com. Call us on 080-2316-3474 or 080-6939-5185 or 070-3189-0555. NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, the much needed help at your doorstep.
All right, this is Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. Now, just before the commercial break, you were listening to the theatre commander of Operation Lafia Dole, Major General Lucky Irabo, speaking to us, of course, on sustaining the gains of, the fight against insurgency in an earlier recorded program while he was in Abuja on official engagement. Let's expand the scope of our conversation now as we bring in other guests, of course, to continue our discussion on this topic. And we have with us right here in the studio Brigadier General Saleh Bala. He's retired. He's the CEO, White Ink Consult Nigeria, and of course a security expert. Thank you very much, Brigadier General.
Thank you very much.
All right. We also have with us here in the studio the Commissioner for Information, Borno State, and the person of Honorable Mohammed Bolama. Honorable Bolama, thank you very much for joining us. And also joining us via Skype from Kano is Kabir Adamu. He's the Managing Director of Beacon Consulting and Security Risk Specialist. It's our pleasure to have you on the program this morning. I'll try to sort out if you could actually pick the audio from here. We'll find out from the Honorable Commissioner. While watching the interview, of course, I saw you nodding in respect to what Major General Rabo was talking about. How is Borno State faring today in terms of all the areas of preparations that have been recovered and then the people returning to a life they used to know?
Thank you very much. Well, I'm sure you've heard the General speak. I mean, General Irabo is who is on ground, like myself. And I want to bear testimony to the fact that things have tremendously improved in Borno today. And if we put things in context, I'm sure people will appreciate more the situation that exists in the state today. 2 years ago, things were so bad. We had curfews that started at 5 o'clock in the evening sometimes at 6 o'clock. There were times we had no access to the GSM telephony system for like 6 months. Things were totally grounded. Nobody dared fly any of the 5 or 6 roads that lead in and out of Maiduguri. The only road that we could fly at that time, before 2 years ago, was the road leading from Maiduguri to Damatu, Kano. And even that, you will use it at your own peril. That was practically the reality. Our communities were sacked. Boko Haram was in command. Many of our towns and villages were under occupation of Boko Haram. And today things have improved drastically. There's a great deal of improvement, and so much so that even the curfew that exists, that starts at 10 o'clock in the evening, there's a lot of clamor for it to be lifted. That just tells you that life has become almost normal. In Borno State, many of our communities, businesses have started picking up. Just last week, the road from Maiduguri through Gubio to Damasak, and the one from Maiduguri through Monguno to Baga, have been reopened. And those are the last two, that had not been put to use, so to say. before now. So you can see that there's a great deal of improvement. We are not saying things are 100%. It will, to be sure, it will take a while before our lives will return to the normalcy that we had 6 years before this mayhem, this madness started.
Okay, but Honorable Balama, let me ask you specifically on the capture of Ground Zero. That's the stronghold of the insurgents. Now, of what significance is that to, the return of life in Borno?
Yeah, that is very significant because the symbolism, things have, for a while, things have started changing for those of us who are on ground, where we've seen a lot of positive and drastic changes in the prosecution of the war against insurgency. The capture of Ground Zero for us in Borno is merely symbolic because we've already seen the gains, we've started feeling it, okay. It has started touching our lives, but it's also important that this symbolism was recorded.
Okay, now that you've talked about gains,
yes.
You've mentioned gains. Let me bring in, of course, Brigadier General Bala, retired. We're looking at sustaining the gains. Are we beginning too early?
Absolutely not. I would like to speak from a professional point of view. I'm a soldier. I retired in 2013 at the verge of when there were videos that were all over YouTube and major networks around the world, including NTA, of soldiers fleeing in the face of insurgents. There is no major gain that I can speak to that this country has achieved than soldiers standing toe-to-toe and clearing insurgents. I think this is a big achievement because the military institution to the nation of Nigeria, the greatness of it, or the greatness of the military institution as the foremost institution of the sovereignty, that today our military does not only lead in the conquest against these insurgents, but also leads the military coalition of the sub-region, really tells a lot about how much we have achieved as a nation. Because in war, I always make the reference to the Clausewitzian triangle. The Clausewitzian triangle for success of war is about the people, the government, and of course the military. There has to be a coordination of these three institutions. And where one is weak, primarily the military, which is the instrument of coercion, which the nation applies to enforce peace and stability. Where you have a failure of that institution, it's about the failure of state. Some others will argue to you that there are nations that do not have militaries, but they do have coercive instruments of state that are well consolidated and sustained to be able to enforce peace. So if we speak about gains, I will speak from a perspective that is true to me as it is true to every citizen that is informed, that today our military is well led, is well logistified, and the equipment state is high, and you even see commanders up the rank of Major General going to lead men, and we are achieving conquest and opening and occupying other areas otherwise which were ungoverned spaces, is a major gain, which we will further discuss on how this has to be sustained.
All right, thank you very much, Brigadier General. We'll be back to you to take on that as well. Okay, we're supposed to be rejoining our guest who joined us via Skype from Kano, also a security risk specialist. But Malam Kabir Adamu, of course, Managing Director of Beacon Consulting and Security Risk Specialist. Now, we're taking a look at sustaining the gains of this fight against insurgency. You've listened to the two guests here, both the commissioner, what is on ground in Borno, and what we need to do further. What exactly do we need to do, in your own estimation, to sustain this gains that we have recorded in the last months and the last moments of the fight against these insurgents?
I don't know if you can hear me, Blessing, but I didn't get your question very well. Can you repeat it, please?
I said, I'm sure you had the opportunity of listening to the guests here in the studio. We're talking about sustaining these gains of the fight against insurgency generally. Other areas have been won, but then even for Major General Irabo, who said winning is not just for the fight now, but even winning the peace. What else do we need to do from your own perspective as a security risk expert?
Talking about winning the peace, as mentioned by Major General Irabo. Now, the counterinsurgency operations have more or less two aspects. And as he has mentioned, the military aspect, I think has been won, so to speak, and tremendous effort has been made by the military. The other aspect is really more or less led by the civil departments. So to that extent, if we are going to win the peace, there are certain key elements that would have to be implemented. One of the most important one is to address the grievances in the local population, especially issues around civil liberty, poverty, unemployment. I know he has mentioned all of that. Unfortunately, it is not a military effort. It is something that other elements that would have to embrace. For instance, the Borno state government, the federal government, and then the role of all the other government departments, including the parliament, will have to see a lot of that being done. You have to win the minds of the people. And how do you win the minds of the people? Is by showing and demonstrating to them that this war that you are carrying out is actually their war. So just not too long ago, about 4 months ago, about 4 groups, all of them international, carried out a research on the reasons behind the insurgency in the northeast, and it will surprise most of us that one of the major reasons mentioned is the attitude of the security forces. Another one, of course, is poverty, and then of course you have the embracing of radical or extremist ideology. So to win the peace, I think we have to take each of these issues one after the other and then to address them. I would like to see going forward a counter-radicalization and a de-radicalization program that would reduce the narrative around extremism that is quite unfortunately rampant within that region. Another thing that we need to look closely at is what we call anti-terrorism. Now, while counter-terrorism is being done by the security forces, the government, anti-terrorism is something that is basically done by the civilian population. And what do we mean by this? What are these soft targets that are being attacked by the insurgents? How do you harden these soft targets to ensure that they are not being targeted by the insurgents? I'll give you an example. Up till today, if you are in Maiduguri, you are likely to see large crowds around markets, around schools, and these are targets, unfortunately, that are waiting to be exploited. So the question is, what steps should we take to ensure that these soft targets are hardened? And this is basically anti-terrorism. It's something that I think the Borno state government, with the support of the civilian security forces, the police, the civil defense, and others should look closely at to reduce the possibility of these places being targeted.
Kabir Adamu, thank you very much. You've raised quite a number of points, but let me also take off from your last point you talked about. That's the threats, of possible threats, of course, arising from, those returning, back to their communities, and of course from pockets of attacks that we have experienced even after the capture of Sambisa Forest. Brigadier General Bala, Major General Irabo talked about pulling out troops to the barracks, that there's contemplation of pulling back troops to the barrack. Do you think that is right?
I cannot contest the assessment of a commander on the ground. Whatever views I will have for most will be out of my experience, 30 years of military service, and could be academic. But I feel very, very strongly about the statement. It is, of course, a promotion of confidence to the morale of the public. But as Irabo well knows, he's my colleague, that an insurgency is called the long war. When I give talks, I get controversial. I tend to give an illustration of an insurgency like religion. The growth of Christianity and Islam was boosted at the time of repression of those religions. And when you speak about insurgency, you speak about a battle of ideas. It is a concept. It is an idea that is being passed from generation to generation. We know of the clash in Europe between Islam and Christianity way back in the centuries. Now we have what Huntington is calling the clash of civilizations. And it is still a divide between westernization that is being, that is a construct of Christianity, and the violent extremism we are seeing from the Middle East, which is being also constructed in the guise of Islam. So the point I'm making, you can see about 500 years of history of a resurgence of a semblance of insurgency. So it is not easy to wish away an idea that has been born over generations.
So we'd like you to round up because so that we can take some other aspects.
Okay.
Yes, we'd like you to conclude your thoughts.
So my thoughts are this: we should be very, very cautious. We should understand the history of insurgency. We shouldn't be quick to withdraw the troops, so to speak. We should sustain the gain by dominating the otherwise ungoverned spaces that encouraged this insurgency.
All right, thank you very much, Brigadier General Bala. Now, Honorable Commissioner, Malam Bulam talked about Adamu Kabir talked about the radicalization of these people that actually gotten into this ideology. They are still right there in the society. Some of them are still sympathetic to this cause. And also the issue of poverty. Are these issues being pursued, at least to actually bring them to the barest minimum, if not totally obliterated?
Yeah, there's no question that the condition that created the emergence of Boko Haram, has a lot to do with poverty, the espousing of radical ideology, and so on and so forth. And these factors are still very much in existence in society. Nobody is doubting that. But I can assure you that on our part as a government, we're doing the best we can, because we know, we understand the underlying factors that led to this mayhem in the first place. And the way to go about it is to address that root cause.
So how are you addressing that? The people want to know.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. First of all, of course, as you know, we're doing a lot in the area of reconstruction already. We're reconstructing communities that have been damaged by Boko Haram. But more than that, we have a whole ministry that is saddled with the responsibility of reconstructing, rehabilitating, and resettling these people in society. And the element of rehabilitation and resettlement obviously seeks to address this question of de-radicalization and counter-radicalization. There are lots of policies, and we are doing that in conjunction with the federal government, with donor agencies, with members of civil society, and so on and so forth. We are creating opportunities for young men and women and young people to get engaged in economic activities.
But how are you communicating that to those involved?
Of course, we have structures in place that are doing that. We have ministries. We have the Minister of Information, for instance, is doing a lot in this respect in terms of creating awareness for the need for people to coexist, for the need for this conflict that General Brigadier General Bala just referred to, you know, between religions and ideas and so on and so forth. And we're doing a lot in that respect in conjunction with NOAA, in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information. We are, to be sure, we are at the formative stages of this engagement, because, as you know, the war is only just coming to an end. You know, like I said before, until recently, people will not even sleep with their eyes closed in Maiduguri, even the state capital. Now that we're doing that, now we're looking at, these are post-insurgency or post-war activities. And we have started them, but as time goes on, we're going to scale up. You know, we have a lot of programs designed to ensure that our young people, especially, are not exposed to these violent ideologies anymore. You know, so not only that we are working to de-radicalize, but even more importantly, we are putting policies in place to ensure a counter-radicalization policy, which is even more important, because not all of our young men and women are exposed to these ideologies. We have a lot of people who are yet to be exposed to it, and we're doing everything possible to make sure that we insulate them.
Yes, and we also have a lot of people who have intermingled with those who are not sympathetic to this ideology. Sorry, let me pause you a while. Yes. Brigadier General Bala, do we have, what particular structure would you recommend, you know, to communicate this de-radicalization, you know, steps that the Honorable Commissioner is talking about?
There are several models, but I won't go into the academics of discussing the models that were. But to remind that in this kind of counterinsurgency, it is a multi-sectoral, to borrow the words from Irabo, it is multi-sectoral, it is multidisciplinary, it is multidimensional, and at various levels. So the issue of de-radicalization is in several levels. It even starts from the home, which is the primary level of responsibility. In trying to deal with this, I might digress to speak to the empowerment of the family. Some years back, we had a launch of the imagery education, which to me, I felt was the greatest elitist insult to the common people. Because the first thing a child needs, actually, I'm always controversial, isn't education. The first thing a child needs is parentage. And where a parent is not empowered to keep a child, like Frank Olizier of blessed memory will say, am I right? Would say, was it? Frank Olizier will say, where is
it's 9 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
Do you know where your children is? But we got to a stage where parents don't even want to bother to know where their children are. And it's not just for the poor. It is also for the very rich elites like us. We are so busy pursuing the existential and material things that we don't even care where our children are. We got to a stage where kids are sent to primary schools, secondary schools abroad. And teachers now started becoming parents. To what extent? We had in history of violent Islamic terrorism that a citizen of Nigeria, a child of one of the most prominent citizens, respected citizens that we have, I'm not casting a blame on the family, but the issue was this child was far from the family. Just like you would have an Alamajiri who would have been born in a village in Kebbi, Sokoto, Kano, Maiduguri, or even my village, Shandam, could have been cast away. So first, the issue of anti-radicalization is what we should be looking at. Because de-radicalization is even more difficult and more complex. So you have the primary parent level, you have the community level, and it grows up to the federal level of intervention.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Brigadier Bala. Let's quickly find from Kabir Adamu, his own views about, yes, you already touched on that, de-radicalization, issue of poverty that have pushed these people into area of ideology that brought about Boko Haram in the first instance. And also take that, this along as well. There were this group, the civilian JTF. What should become of them even going forward? These are people who have been exposed to different arms and ammunition.
Okay, if I got your question well, what happens to the civilian JTF after the counterinsurgency operations? Is that right?
And then we talked about the issue of de-radicalization and aspect of poverty that pushed some of those people into this ideology in the first instance.
Sorry, please come again with the question.
Okay, you got the first part, which I talked about, the civilian JTF. What becomes of them? These people have been exposed to different ammunition and arms in the fight against insurgents. And I also asked you to take alongside the area of de-radicalization of some of those people who have embraced this ideology.
I think it's very important to understand that the Office of the National Security Advisor has rolled out, the so-called countering violent extremism approach, and it has all of these elements that we're mentioning. What remains to be done is a plan, and a well laid out strategy for the implementation of that plan. What roles will be played by each segment of the society? Also, very importantly, there are moderate, scholars that have spoken up against the ideology of the Jamaat al-Islam al Jihad. Now, how do you promote this moderate ideology, this counter ideologies? How do you ensure that the young person who is likely to be targeted by, recruiters would now understand that whatever interpretation of the scriptures that has been, promoted to him is wrong, and that he's able to tell, that recruiter that no, this is another interpretation, and this one is something that I embrace, and I do not agree with you. So for me, those are steps that need to be taken. The military approach has reached, a point where we must commend, especially the Operation Lapia Dole commanders, and of course the other elements of the military approach. But then the next steps, I think it's the Office of the National Security Advisor, the Parliament, and then several other elements, especially the civil society, the NGOs that are operating there, that would support this effort. There is no doubt that especially the border area that allows the crisscrossing of elements, both the active members of the Jamaat al-Islam al Jihad and those that support them in terms of funding, in terms of warfare. Those are areas that I think we need to look into going forward.
All right, Kabir Adamu, Managing Director, Beacon Consulting and Security Risk Specialist. Thank you so much for your insight on the program this morning. All right, so we have Nigerians already reacting to the discussion. We'll quickly read out the tweets. You may wish to respond to some of them as we move on. Okay, from Wilson Godwin, we have this tweet. The greatest mistake will be for us as a people to go to sleep thinking that we have defeated Boko Haram insurgents.
And Mike Anyako tweets, with the defeat of Boko Haram, federal government and other northeastern states should fast-track governance for developmental efforts in the region.
And this one from Dele Jack Solomon. The extermination of the terrorist insurgents from their Camp Zero enclave in Sambisa Forest by the Nigerian army is a gain by the government.
And Sunny Michael Omakoje tweets, the defeat of these elements will go a long way to rekindle investors' confidence in that Nigeria is safe once again to invest.
And Sunny continues, the clubbing of Sambisa Forest should continue until they are completely annihilated like collapsed building.
And David Mike Turungwa tweets, military action kill terrorists, while education kill terrorism. To sustain this peace, the two must go hand in hand.
And from Yaya Sule, I think this is change we all voted for. As Muhammadu Buhari will try his best in fighting insurgents and bring back hope in northern and Nigeria.
And Festus Akimboyewa tweets, sustaining the gains in war against insurgency should start with reconstruction and economic development of Northeast.
From Suleiman Sanusi, this is a fight on Boko Haram, not on Shekau alone. Shekau is one man.
And Abdullahi Babagana tweets, please ask your guest, is there any local government under the control of Boko Haram now?
And from Razak Continuity, it says, good morning to you guys, really enjoying the program a lot. Just to say kudos to Lieutenant Colonel Lucky Rabo. May Almighty God be with you, family and your troop. I think Major General Lucky Rabo.
All right, and Abu Malik tweets, for sure, the NA had done more than a lot in containing the Boko Haram sect. NA, I guess, means of course, Nigerian army. But yet, Shekau needs to be brought to book at any cost.
Okay, other people, great job by the Nigerian military. May God strengthen your elbows in this fight against insurgents. That's from Shamorano.
And we have quite a number of tweets. We'll just quickly pace up now. Again, Dele Jack Solomon tweets again. Winning the battle against Boko Haram terrorists should translate to the restitution of socio-economic activities of northeastern Nigeria.
Change to progress. This is to encourage the military to work more on intelligence to identify the people that sponsored Boko Haram for persecution and punishment.
And Aminu Deba tweet, kudos to our gallant soldiers. Thank you so much.
Another one from Ibrahim and Festus. Our military must be proactive and prevent insurgents from regrouping in any part of Nigeria. Military stocks must be well guarded. And also we have that of the Ibrahim. Track all Boko Haram leaders because they can't blend in society. They are capable of recruiting and setting explosive from hiding. Those are your tweets.
Those are your tweets, and we'd like to quickly go over to the Commissioner of Borno State, Commissioner of Information, Borno State. Major General Irabo talked about the fact that what needs to be done now to win the peace is 30% civil, and that includes, you know, of course, education, that addressing poverty, and most of the people returning, you know, victims returning, are people who have lost everything. Most of them are children, you know, who are orphaned. So what are you doing, especially as one of the tweets said, in the area of education? What plans have you got?
Thank you very much. Let me first say that the tone of all the tweets that we have read itself is very, very encouraging. Though it appears very clearly that there's now a consensus in Nigeria to support our military, and there's an ownership now of this thing being a Nigerian problem, rather than the problem of Borno or the North or the Northeast and so on and so forth. So that alone is encouraging. And I would like to assure Nigerians that on our part as the state government, we're doing the best we can. We've already deployed our resources to reconstructing many parts of the state that have been destroyed through this crisis.
Let's speak to education.
Yes, education. Education, we're already building lots of schools, especially for orphans. You know, in the city of Maiduguri alone, we are building about 5 model schools just for orphans, because we have hundreds of thousands of orphan children that need to be catered for. And government is creating centers for them. We are deploying the best ICT technology in these areas. We have reopened schools. You know, for 2 or 3 years, all schools in Borno State had been closed down. Now what we have done is to make sure that these schools have been reopened. So we had to move the IDPs to other locations so that the schools could resume. So the fact that schools have resumed alone is an indication that Borno State government is addressing the problem of education very seriously, because we recognize the fact that the neglect of education is one of the fundamental reasons that brought about Boko Haram in the first place. So a lot of resources is being committed. In the budget for 2017, education has by far the largest or the lion's share of any ministry. Okay. You know, and remember we have 3 ministries of education. We have basic education, lower education, and higher education. And we are putting a lot of resources in that area.
Okay, for those who have lost,
yes.
those who have lost everything
Yes.
that they have, are there plans by both state and probably the local government to enable, these people have a restart, start off?
Yes, yes, we're already doing that in places where, in towns and villages that are relatively safe. We've already started doing that. Apart from reconstructing homes and other public infrastructure, we're also putting in places infrastructure that will ensure that people have their means of livelihood back. As a matter of fact, not only back, but improved, especially for women. A lot of emphasis is being placed so that when people go back, especially the women, they'll be empowered to not only take care of themselves, but in fact the entire family. So a lot is being done in that. But let me add that the government of Borno State alone does not have the capacity to shoulder this responsibility alone.
And that is why there was the Northeast Development Commission.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
So let's bring in Brigadier, General Bala. A lot of people have said, look, expressed concern that what probably befell the NDDC might not happen to the NEDC. So how might the NEDC, intervene in this reconstruction process?
I am aware of an interministerial...
And effectively?
I am aware of an interministerial committee that has been set up by the president to address the immediate intervention to support the governments of the three states, but pointedly the epicenter, which is Borno State. That is a welcome idea, because more or less the pointed thing is to address the immediate, to booster the immediate human security requirements: health, education, physical security, distribution of relief, and also protection of the development, the redevelopment, the reconstruction of the home states that otherwise would have been abandoned, principally to enable the return of the internally displaced people back to their homes. But then again, you are aware of the several platforms, from the Victim Support Fund to the Northeast
Development Commission?
Development Commission, the Presidential Initiative on the Northeast.
The Presidential Initiative on the Northeast. There are all those platforms, but there is the wholesome effort to bring them under the commission, which will coordinate. Let us not forget that it is a multidimensional approach, which even civil society, their effort at present is almost 60%. If you go to these places, you find a wash of several NGOs, both local and international, supporting the effort of government and the people. And that must not be neglected.
All right, one support I want you to quickly bring in as a military person. There is the issue of unexploded ordinances and even unmarked areas. As the people are returning, they will find strange objects here and there. What should they be doing to actually play safe and be safe as they return?
The armed forces, so to speak, the army precisely, and the police have specialist units that are ensuring that the IEDs are cleared. And those that cannot be cleared immediately are marked.
There are some unmarked areas.
There are some marked areas. It's a long process. Vietnam still has unexploded devices. In eastern Nigeria, we are still finding bombs from the Biafran civil war. So it's a long process. I have served in Angola as a young major way back in the early 90s, and there is still a huge international effort going on. That is why war is bad. It is an evil we will live with for a long time, but then government is empowering the armed forces and the police to actually do the clearing of the mines. There is also the international UN organization, Mine Action, that is being invited to help train, equip local people, educate them on the dangers of mines, and also how to identify
So
them.
we could look into this area.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Before I think that Claire, any other question?
All right, Honorable Bulama, just last question for you. You talked about the other time, means of communicating, this whole program to, of course, the beneficiaries. How significant, is the role of the religious leaders?
Very, very important. The religious institution, the ulama, our clergy, they have a very, very important role to play in bringing back normalcy to society. Like you said, there are three stages that we need to address. The counter-radicalization, the re-radicalization, and the anti-radicalization. These are three processes that we have to design to fight and win back the minds and hearts of our people. And the religious leaders have a very, very, very important role to play. And in recognition of that, in my state, the Ministry of Information, the Ministry of Religious Affairs, and the Ministry of Justice, we are working hand in hand to come up, we've gone very far in that, to come up with a program that will put the religious institution, in the middle of this fight.
In the mainstream of this.
Yes. No, we need to do that. But like I said, fighting or winning the peace is even more difficult.
You have to conclude.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do. Winning the peace is even more difficult than
winning the war.
Winning the war.
Absolutely.
The military, they've done a lot. We salute their patriotism, their gallantry, their sacrifices. But all Nigerians, we need to come together, to make sure that never again such a thing happens to us. And like I said, we need a coordinated effort from all, from the federal government, from the state government. We are doing our best, but we need to really, really work hard to consolidate this and make sure that things go.
It's a tax for everybody.
Yes.
Honorable Mohammed Bulama, Borno State Commissioner for Information, would like to thank you so much for finding time to come talk to us about what is happening in Borno in sustaining this war against the fight against insurgency. Also, would like to thank Brigadier General Salebala, CEO White Ink Consulting, and also a security expert. Thank you so much. It was great tapping from the wealth of experience.
Thank you indeed.
Okay, the program on the last lap, we'll take a look at what the weather prospects will be for the rest of the day.
The forecast from the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. I am Onyilo Desmond. Dust haze should be the prevalent weather come Wednesday the 4th. As we expect, this dust suspended over the north Tuesday afternoon to move further into the central region and then south as from 10 p.m., while these over Chad Republic should hit the northern fringes of the country by midnight, all on Tuesday. And by Wednesday, we expect moderate dust haze to prevail over most parts of the country, horizontal visibilities of 2 to 5 kilometers. However, pockets of visibilities under 1,000 meters are likely over Lokoja, Yelwa, Kanu, Nguru, Dutse, Potiskum, and Maiduguri axis. And this suspended dust should keep both daytime and nighttime temperatures on the low side. Let's stand by for its forecast.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. We appreciate your company. Let's meet again tomorrow. My name is Blessing Abu. One piece for Borno and every part of the north, and also Nigeria as a whole.
And as usual, let's all try to make Nigeria great